Here at the Culture Architects Show, we're fans of exploring a lot of different ways of looking at culture building and leadership as well. So joining us today is William Vanderbloemen. And William is a pastor, and he's also the author of a book called Be the Unicorn, 12 Data-Driven Habits That Separate the Best Leaders from the Rest. He's got over 15 years of ministry experience, which we're going to go into today as a senior pastor, and he's got a solid foundation in professional executive search. He's got his own firm, Vanderbloemen Search Group, and he's an award-winning firm that helps churches and other faith-based organizations with hiring, succession planning, and connecting with the right people. William, we're excited to have you on the podcast with us today, so welcome to Culture Architects.
Thanks, David. It's a real honor to be with you. Appreciate you making time.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's go back. Again, you have a very interesting background being both a pastor and now running a search firm. So tell me about how did you get into being a pastor, and what was the transition from years as a head pastor to then changing careers to a degree? Give me that story.
The how I got being a pastor, I have thousands of friends that would love to know the answer to that. I'm from this little town in Western North Carolina, and grew up kind of a chronic entrepreneur. I was the paper boy that bought out the routes around me and redistributed them and sold them back off. So I had a denser route, just a weird chronic condition. And then in college, I had a really, really good time that I shouldn't have. So the net is, when I graduated high school, I guess we had scarcity of talent, but I won most likely to succeed, right? So then fast forward 10 years to high school reunion, and they did new superlatives, which was kind of a fun idea. First to get married, most kids, I was the unanimous winner for least likely career choice. Okay,
interesting. So entrepreneur to pastor.
They'll let you be a pastor? Man, they got no quality control. So I went through this sort of college journey where you try new things and you party too hard and all that. And that led to kind of an awakening, a self-realization, that faith got important to me. And I thought, well, I had some really great professors at Wake Forest, and I thought, that's pretty cool. I'll do what they're doing. So I went off to Princeton to seminary, and thought I'd be a PhD teaching, and then realized that those people actually like sitting in libraries and reading about what got dug up. That gives them energy. And I'd rather go to the dentist, So what's a sales job with faith? Well, there you go, pastor. So pastor for about 15 years and got a chance to serve some really great congregations. And the last being a fairly large and historic church in Houston, First Presbyterian, wonderful people. Left the ministry as I found myself a single dad with 4 kids, and just decided, okay, I need to go do something different. So I went into the corporate world for a Fortune 200 company in their HR department and oil and gas. And while I was there, the CEO said, we need to do my succession. And I'm on HR, so I was kind of on the team. I was probably more like the third string water boy, but got to see that happen. And they used this thing called a search firm. I'd never heard of such a thing. And at First Presbyterian Houston, which is where Sam Houston went to church. I mean, it's a legit place, right? They took 3 years to find me. I left. They took 3 years to find the next guy, and I was only there 6 years. And so I'm sitting at my desk in my new job in this oil and gas, and I'm thinking, why in the world the business world gets this done? 90 days, they had their new CEO. And then this fabulous church, they got 6 years where they're looking and 6 years where they have some. I thought, oh my gosh. I went home, told my wife, we'd just gotten married, just blended our families, bought a house we could barely afford. And I said, babe, I think I'm supposed to quit my job and start something new for churches. And Adrian looked at me and said, that's because churches love new ideas, right? Which, no, they don't. Your son, I think, might know the answer to this. No, they don't. So off we went. She should have said, I love you and I love your vision, but go back to work. We got to feed these children. Instead, she said, let's give it a try. And it was the fall of 2008,
Wow.
which I don't know if you remember your economy, but that was not the smartest time to quit your
People
job.
weren't hiring.
No. Yeah. But long story made short. Fast forward 16 years, we've completed 3,000 churches,
Wow.
searches. And what started with a really singular question: how can we help churches find their next pastor quicker and better? Like that was the origin. Has branched out into so many more things now, because you go work for a church and then all of a sudden the board member's like, well, I'm on the board of a school over here and we really need a headmaster and we're values driven. So can you, another board member. Oh, I'm on the board of a nonprofit and helping end homelessness in Dayton, Ohio, or wherever it is. Would you come help us with that? And now, so we have these verticals growing, and now probably our fastest growing sector, we still serve churches, but privately held businesses. They have a really clean code of culture that they want things to their top leaders to fit. Kind of like the easiest way to say it would be the Chick-fil-A's of the world,
right?
And that's really cool. So we're that's why I'm so excited about your podcast, because kind of where we started was great, and I'm forever thankful. Where we're sitting right now and headed is much more of that's the search firm that understands our culture, understands our why, and they'll go find people based on that, and they'll bring us a tissue match, not just somebody that's talented. So
cool.
I want to learn from you. And we're all about,
we had a lot to share. So it's a great transition or connection to this whole culture space. So I know, from your background that you have been a big proponent, and I see it on your website, of your cultural statements, your 9 values that you drive, but you've been a big proponent for, I think, some period of time that culture is critical and that companies should be intentional in how they drive their culture. So what led you to that realization or recognition? How did you someday decide, you know what, the world needs to be more focused on culture and people to do it purposely?
Well, you can't see it in the screen here, but right behind me is my undergraduate degree, which is not in business. It's not in culture. It's in religion and philosophy. So
mine is in philosophy as well.
Okay. Oh, really? So are you an Aristotle guy or Plato?
More of an Aristotle.
All right. That's kind of where I am.
Yeah.
It's a little more structured.
Yes.
Anyway, everything I've learned in business, I've had to learn on the fly or from people that were kind enough to teach me along the way. And as we were building this company out from the ground up, just on a card table, we did no debt, no investors, just move at the speed of cash. We started growing really fast, and we started hiring people. And I was coming out of when I learned leadership, it was the 10-year strategic plan, right? Vision, values, the kind of the standard issue stuff that was going on in the 90s and early 2000s. And I was pretty put off by it. And frankly, I don't know that I have the vision to see 10 years out. So I thought, why don't we focus instead on how we're going to behave with one another while we're here? And we've got a vision. We know what we're trying to do. Why don't we focus on how we're going to treat one another while we're getting that done? Yes. And that led to a long process of discovering what we called our cultural values, which we define as how we're going to treat one another and behave while we're accomplishing our vision, right? I don't know if we just got lucky. I don't know how, but very quickly we started winning a lot of awards. Third best place to work in Houston. Entrepreneur named us top company culture in their nationwide survey. And then it got kind of stupid. We won best office dog. I mean, like, it was kind of and one of my staff members, who's a little younger and wiser than I am, said, we need to write a book on culture. I was like, why? And she said, because sooner or later we're going to quit winning awards. I said, okay. So off we went and started looking at what are the books out there on corporate culture. And there's some really great ones. Work Rules, the Google book. You could name more than I could. The Nordstrom Way. The new gold standard is the Ritz-Carlton story. Mercedes has a book out that's really fabulous. But every one of these books was the story of a company, one. And we said, well, why don't we study a bunch of companies? And I asked my assistant at the time, I handed her the entrepreneur, here's the top company cultures, and there are 150 of them listed. I said, go see if we can talk to every one of those CEOs.
Mm-hmm.
We did. And we just asked them a bunch of questions, see what do all these people have in common that are creating a workplace people want to come to?
Mm-hmm.
And we really think we uncovered a roadmap for building a company culture. It was really eye-opening. And that's when I started to see we were having fun, we were growing. It's easy to say you're a good culture when you're growing 40% year over year.
Sure.
But I started to see the value and the glue of culture. I actually saw a lot of mistakes we made building our culture. I would love to go write 2 more chapters to the book we ended up. It's called, by the way, I know we're not talking about it today, but it's called Culture Wins, the roadmap to building an irresistible workplace. And it's just case studies. So it's not my story. It's not us. It's what we learned. And the longer I have studied this, the more I think you are really onto something. Culture builds retention. Retention is declining with every new generation that hits the workforce. And it costs so much money to replace people. I mean, so it's probably bad business, I guess, right? If I fix everybody's culture, they'll never hire me to do a search. But
yeah.
So.
Well, it's interesting because your experience parallels to a great extent my own, William, in that I was a philosophy major, got started in business very early. And for me, when we started building culture in my first company, I thought of it more as standards than anything else. I wasn't really thinking about culture per se. There's a certain way that I wanted us to do things. And I figured, well, I can't assume everybody's just going to magically figure that out or just watch me and pick up my cues, that I got to teach people this is the way we're going to do things in our company. And so I defined a set of behaviors for how we were going to operate. We call them fundamentals. That's our own nomenclature. And I created this set of fundamentals for this is how we're going to operate. And at the time, to me, it was just standards. I wasn't thinking about culture this is back in the 80s, and culture wasn't as hot as it is today.
Wow.
And we did all this stuff, and it was only in retrospect that I realized, I guess that's really what culture is about. And listeners to our podcast will know that for me, I'm all about everything we talk about is behaviors, like you're saying. I don't really, to a certain extent, you describe behaviors and you call them your values. I make this, in our work, we make this distinction between what we call values and what we call behaviors. Values to me are typically abstract concepts, ideas, notions, beliefs. Behaviors are actions. So I would call your 9 things behaviors and not values. But whatever you want to call them, those are the way that you want to behave. These are the way that we're going to do things. And if you could articulate those clearly enough, and then you can, I call it institutionalize them, now you really have something going on. So I'm curious. So you've articulated a set of 9, you call them values, I would call them behaviors, for this is the way we do things, in our company. And many of them are very synergistic with some of the fundamentals that I teach in my own company. But I'm curious, okay, you've got them written down. How do you, I'm going to use the word institutionalize them. How do you get them so people are living these and they're a living, breathing part of how you operate? Talk about that.
Well, it's a journey, right? And I'm sorry to reach earlier. I was just reaching around to show you my little block that everybody's got on their desk. It sits, it's right there. And but how do you get? I've
got a mouse pad like that.
Well, if I were smart, we would have shot from the conference room and not my office, because the conference room literally has all 9 of them plastered on the wall, literally. So, it's a long journey getting there. But I think what has helped mobilize an idea about behaviors or values, whichever word you want to use, it starts with me. If I am not willing to sort of incarnationally live out these values, then it all goes in the toilet. And I'm coming from a very unique perspective as an entrepreneur who started a business. So like everything that comes out of here, if you start your own thing, you are going to set the culture. I tell new organizations, we don't know what our culture is, but we're fairly, we're 10 years old. I said, look at the 5 people who have the longest tenure, study them, and you'll know the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not I don't know that culture, for my understanding,
Mm-hmm.
is an aspirational set of things. It's more this. Here's the question we asked when we started studying what are our values. When we are functioning at our very best, what do we do as a team that's common to us, but uncommon to other teams around us? Like, what's distinct? When we're at our best,
Mm-hmm.
how are we behaving that's really distinct and unique? And that led to a long, wonderful process of going through success stories and then mining out, almost like a archaeological dig, where you're just brushing a little bit at a time and discovering. And that's what we discovered in studying these 150 companies is it takes a long time to really unearth and memorialize your cultural values, because they can't be what you would like to be. They have to be what you are when you're at your best. Like, if I said my cultural value is let's be ridiculous. Let's say one of our values is that everybody can slam dunk a basketball. Well, that ain't happening,
Right.
or even better, there's a company we studied that had the big elevator bank in their lobby, one of the largest companies in the world. They have 4 walls, and they had their 4 cultural values on the 4 walls. And it was like, I'll get it wrong, but integrity, trustworthiness, respect, and I forget the 4th one. And that was the lobby of the Enron building.
Right.
So it's not aspirational. It's what you really are. And the minute that I let up on that and quit embodying those values, it will trickle down.
Mm-hmm.
Now, past me, what we've learned is when we're interviewing new people, especially if they haven't grown up under our company from an entry-level position, we better interview through the lens of these 9 values to see if they're there. Because I don't know. You figured this out, I bet. I don't know how to teach culture. I think you either line up with their values or you don't. I really don't know how to force feed someone these values. It's really hard. And maybe you can teach me how to do that. But
yeah, there are ways to do that. So I'm curious. I want to push back on something you said there and just open up a dialogue about that. So you made the comment that this can't be or shouldn't be, in your view, aspirational. It's got to be who we really are. And I have a different point of view about that. I think that what we're trying to build in most cases is the best company we can possibly build. And some of that is not who we are today, but it's who we aspire to be. And our goal is to get there. I mean, if we use a sports analogy, we're trying to win the Super Bowl. Right now, we're not a Super Bowl winning team. Right. And there are things we're going to have to, there are things that we do that will help us get there, that we do right now. And there are other things that we don't, frankly, do as well as we need to do in order to be a Super Bowl winning team. And we're trying to describe what would that look like. And we're not claiming that we are that today. We're saying this is what it would look like. And these are the things we're going to have to get better at and help and support and coach each other along the way so that we can get to that point. And so I would suggest we might want to think about it being aspirational.
That's why you are smarter than me and been doing this long. But to me, they're just something. Well, for example, one of our values is probably the biggest one on that wall in the conference room is called ridiculous responsiveness.
Yes.
And we have just made it the backbone of what we do to get back to people quickly and with intention.
Yes.
And what we discovered over the years is that's really weird.
Yeah.
Most people don't do that.
Yeah.
Most people wait. Most people, and can I teach someone to become more like that? Yes. Can we reward people for behaving in line with that? You better bet you. Like, you don't get your full bonus if you're not living in the values. Yes. It's actually part of an annual review for us. So on the other hand, can I hire someone who really isn't good at getting back to people, really is very methodical, very discerning, slower to act? Can I bring someone like that in here and have them be happy at work and tell their friends about it? Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not. So for me, it's behaviors. I say it when I talk to people. It's like we figured out what kind of crazy we were because
Right.
it's a little weird to get back to people really fast.
Yeah.
And now we know what our crazy is, and we don't want to bring somebody in here that we're going to make crazy.
Yeah.
So we want to filter based on, are these people somewhat like our values, and can we all work
Yes.
together to get better at them, right? But can I, super example, we had a young woman who worked here. She was so good. Oh my gosh, she was so good. Then she had twins, and one of them had a health problem. And she just said, I love you guys. I need to take care of my babies. And by the way, there's no way I can get back to you after hours anymore.
Yeah.
My life changed.
Mm-hmm.
And because the values were so well defined, it was no longer a statement of, well, you've got these kids and you can't do work. And she came to us and said, I can't match the values right now. I might be able to when they're a little older. Maybe this is a long time out, but it's that kind of thing that I don't know. And I probably ought to talk to you for a long time about how to coach that. I can coach it up. It's got to be there a little bit and coach it up to another level, but I can't force fit. I don't know how to yet.
Yeah. Well, what I would say, and by the way, we have a fundamental that we call be a fanatic about response time. That's our language for it. So it's the same thing. We are crazy about how fast we get back to people. It's just a big priority of mine. So like you. And what I would say, so two comments I would make. One is about to what degree can you teach those things and to what degree you can't. The way that I say it, and I'm curious on your point of view about this as a search person, but I say to people that I can hire somebody who has the general predisposition to be the way we want to be. And I could have those traits flourish in our company in a way that they might not somewhere else. So for example, if we talk about people that really, truly get customer service, like in their heart of hearts, they're just love to serve. I can take somebody who's got that in them, and if you put them in my environment, that's going to flourish in a way that it might not somewhere else. In their last company, they might have been like the oddball. And in our company, they're like, yeah, that's how we do things here. But I can't take somebody who's missing the genetic code for service and turn them into a service maniac. So
I think
they have to have the predisposition.
So you're saying things more eloquently than I can, but that's exactly what we're trying to learn how to do here is you've got to have some bias toward these values or you're really just not going to have a very fun time here.
Yeah, it's not going to be a good fit.
And then we can coach you up and we have a culture team and a culture calendar and a budget for culture and all those things that are expensive and tedious. Many people think, I think they pay high dividends, but if you don't have those innate things, like I'm going to get in trouble. Can I share something without? Okay. So nobody, right. So like, we're fairly notorious for if we have somebody come in that wants to work here and they come in for an interview and they fly home, we fly them in and out the same day. Having someone from the office text them at like 10 at night when they land and say, so glad you were here. I missed you. Can we connect sometime? And just see what happens. And if they don't text back right away, no big deal. That's not the end of the world, right? We'll keep moving forward. But it is a little bit of a test to see, even if they write back and say, just landed, I'll get with you tomorrow and we'll figure out a time. If they do that,
they get it.
Well, we say they're crazy like us.
Right.
So I've got to find better ways to do it. That's probably entrapment, right? But
I mean, you're testing for that. And it's funny. I laughed about this. I was having this conversation with somebody last week because we are fanatics about response time like you. And when I hear the excuses people have, I'll get somebody that says, sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. I've been traveling. And I think, do they not have internet when you're traveling? There's no cell service anywhere where you've traveled? Like you have a phone.
How was Ecuador?
Yes, exactly. Or Antarctica. Because what does that have to do with not being able to get back to me? It has nothing to do with it. You got a phone. You got to leave somebody a text at midnight and say, hey, got your message, just landed, as you said, or whatever. So the excuses aren't there. But I would say to your question, though, William, about being able to coach and teach these things, my experience, and some of our audience know this if they've been regular listeners of our stuff or know our material, is that you absolutely can and should be teaching these things in a systematic way.
Yes.
And the way that we do that and teach people to do that is we talk about the concept of rituals. Churches are all about rituals, and that when something becomes a ritual, it's just part of the fabric of how we do things around here. And the way we leverage that concept, which you could easily do with your 9 values, is we take one each week and we focus on it. We call it the fundamental of the week. You might call it the value of the week. And we do a series of things throughout that week to focus on that particular fundamental.
Oh, that's good.
As a simple example, and you could easily do this, as a simple example, every meeting that we have in our company this week, the first agenda item of the meeting is the fundamental of the week. And we spend the first 3 to 5 minutes talking about it. So our fundamental this week is called follow up everything. I know if you don't follow up stuff, it doesn't get done. And so we're just rigorous about that. So every meeting, everywhere in our company, virtually or otherwise, the first thing we do this week is we spend a couple of minutes talking about following up everything. Next week, every meeting starts with next week's fundamental and so on. So we do a variety of rituals that give us lots of chances throughout the week to think about and talk about and explore and, in a sense, marinate in this value or this fundamental. And if you do that, it's just what you're doing is you're raising the awareness. You're putting it more in the front of people's minds instead of the back of their minds. And the more they think about it, the more they're living it.
I'm going to steal that from you.
Yeah.
So we do it a little bit differently. And of course, what's the business plan that works? The one everybody agrees to. Yeah. That's all. You can do this 100 different ways as long as the whole team agrees this is how we're going to do it. And so do you know the name Horst Schultz?
I know him well and interviewed him on my podcast as well.
Yeah, Horst taught me a long time ago the way he built the Ritz-Carlton for listeners that don't
their
know.
Daily
Literally
and their
built
basics.
Everything other than the London and Paris Ritz. Every other Ritz has his signature on it. It's an amazing guy who started out. I think was he a busboy or
he went to a boarding school in Germany when he was a teenager to learn the hotel business.
Yeah, but started at the lowest rung of the ladder and worked his way up. So the way they do this at Ritz-Carlton, I think they call their values or
basics.
Yep, they call them the gold standards, and that's the book, The New Gold Standard. And everybody, my daughter works for Ritz-Carlton, so I've seen it. Like on their back of their credentials are the 4 or 5 or however many it is gold standards, and every meeting at the beginning of every shift, every single day, from CEO to sous chef, they start with a stand-up, and they'll do birthdays and work anniversaries, and then they move to, okay, what's the standard of the day? Yeah. And they rotate who has to run point on that. And all you have to do is say, this week, I saw David living out the value of follow up everything when he did this, this, and this. And I'm trying to learn from that, and I'm trying to get better. So you've elevated the value. So that's kind of what we do. We do one a month. So every week that month, when we have all staff, we'll hear different stories. And there's usually a culture event every month, and we'll try and sync it with whatever that value is. One time we were looking at, it doesn't have to be expensive. We were much poorer company at the time, and we were looking at solution side living. It's one of our 9 values. And our millennial on staff, we had a bunch of them, but this particular one in charge of culture said, can we go do an escape room? And I said, well, I know that's the hip thing to do. This is a long time ago. But why do you want to go do that? She said, because it will teach us how to solve a problem we haven't seen. And that's what we're focused on this month. And I thought, that's brilliant. You're smarter than I am. Run with it. So, man, there are a lot of ways to do it, but your way of one a week, every single meeting, I love it.
Yeah. And there are a number of different things you can do like that, but the cadence of taking one every week. And I would just, the advice I have given so many employers is that when people ask me sometimes, so Ritz-Carlton does it daily. We have a couple clients that do it daily, but the rest of us do focus on one a week. When people ask me about what's the right cadence, should it be daily, weekly, monthly, whatever, my own experience with this is that the one challenge with being as infrequent as monthly is we tend to, not always, but we tend to think about it when we're talking about it today. And then if we're not really doing anything for 28 more days or 30 more days, it's not as fresh in our mind. Whereas a weekly schedule puts a little more intensity of focus on it because we're really highly focused this week. And so there's some value in considering, a weekly cycle to things.
Yeah, and we've even added a few things along the way, like you have a culture team, not just one. We started with one person. We called it the culture whip, like in Congress, whip up votes, someone to make sure everybody. We've spread it out a little bit since then, and they'll send out emails, during that month and say, spotted this article on Harvard Business Review. It really talks about solution side living. Let's all read it, and then that'll give us something to talk about when we're together. So we're trying to hit it like a kind of a Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope way of doing it. Just a little from here, a little from there, and hopefully by the end of the month, that value is driven pretty deep. With the biggest part of our infusion of culture is in onboarding, and we have a very you're familiar with HubSpot?
Yep, we use it.
Yeah, sure. As a funnel. So years ago, we thought, what if we flip the script? Instead of you got potential customers at the top of the funnel reading your blog, and then it moves down, and then they're engaged, and then they're raving fans. What if we treated new employees like a HubSpot prospect? We built an automated funnel over their first 90 days. It starts them up here, and it moves them a little more, and it moves them a little more.
Very cool.
Down a required reading list, down notes, and the workflows actually don't just go to the new employee. They go to the boss of the new employee. New person's showing up. Make sure you drive this value by doing this. And we've tried a lot of different things over the years. But, we're still learning as we go.
Yeah, well, we always are. So curious, you've got these 9 values. When did you come up with them, and have they changed at all over time? Or do you see them as, no, we got to stick with these?
I don't, I can tell you how we came up with them. Whether or not we add or change, I don't know the answer to that. I know the company is different than it was when we started the values. You grow, you change things, you get bigger, things move slower. Response time is harder in a big company than it is in a small. So, where we were a PT boat, we're not an aircraft carrier now, but it's much harder to turn quickly the bigger the boat, right?
How many employees do you have?
We have 40 full-time. Got it. At least, it's early today. So either way.
Yeah.
But we're not a big business, but when we started the values, nearly everybody was doing every job. It was small. And the way we discovered what I like to say, we didn't name the values, or we didn't draw them up. We discovered that they were there, was a bit of an archaeological dig. We went away for a couple days. And we said, and we were just flying blind, so we probably did it totally wrong. But if
it worked, it's right.
Put the big butcher paper up on the walls, and we said, okay, let's think back. We're 3 years old, or however old it was at the time. Let's think back. Everybody think about a day that you went home from work, and you looked at your spouse, or you talked to your friends, and you said, we won today. We did good. Okay, get that picture in your mind, and then we're going to go around and share those stories. So, and it took a long time. And, eventually the walls are covered with butcher paper of people telling stories of when we won. And then we said, okay. That's when we're working at our best. What were we doing that enabled that? And it led to 30 or 40 different, we got back to people quickly, and, we solved a puzzle we'd never seen before, like lots of different. Then and there's probably a better way, but then I said, okay, great. We're going to leave that where it is. And I had the intention of dealing with it right away, but we were growing. We didn't have much time. So they got stuck in a drawer, like most retreats, and nothing done with it. And then about 6-8 months later, I pulled it back out. That was actually the best mistake I made for our cultural values, because it, as you say, marinated a little bit. And I dropped back and said, okay, I'll be wordsmith. I'll try and find some common buckets here. I think we had it down to 15 buckets at the time of different things we were doing, and tried to make it the most irreducible number, so you don't have too many. 9 is probably too many, but I
have 30 fundamentals.
Okay. Well, we got down to the 9 that seemed to make sense. And then we wordsmithed together a little bit, and then I went away and came up with final wording. And there's probably a lot better way to do this, but that's how we did it. And it was 9, which, by the way, made me crazy, because I'm probably a little OCD. And why is this not 10? Why can't even down to my first career? Can we not have 2 stone tablets? And I even thought about, well, why don't we add one more? No, I'm going to trust the process.
Mm-hmm.
So the picture is not, I went on the mountain and figured out our cultural values. No, the picture is we were all at the bottom of the mountain and we were digging around in our world, figuring out what are we? So that's how we came up with them.
And so how many years ago, what year was that you came up with them?
11 or 12 years ago, either 12 or 13, probably 2012.
Got it. And have you changed any of them since then?
No. And maybe
and not suggesting you should or shouldn't, just curious.
No, we haven't. We've just tried to drill them. And the way they get lived out is different now than in years prior. Mm-hmm. But we've left it where it is. And maybe that needs to change. But I remember, we worked in the 150 case studies we did. We did nonprofits, for-profits, faith-based, not faith-based. Like, we looked everywhere. And one of the few churches we studied is a church in Atlanta called North Point Community Church.
Heard of them, yep.
Yeah, Andy Stanley, who is arguably one of the best communicators that we've ever had in the country. I mean, that's a big statement, but he takes complex things and puts them in simple sayings. You go, oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Well, so I interviewed them. Where'd you come up with your cultural values? 500 employees. Okay, so pretty good sized company. And how long did it take you? And they said, it took a year. And it's, you have the best wordsmith on the planet. You've been around for 20 years. You already know what y'all do. They said, well, we kind of realized the old timers were doing inside jokes and the new people didn't know. And it's time to codify this and put it around words. Okay, so you need simple words. Why not let Andy go up on the mountain? And they were like, no. No, this was a crowdsourced deal. It had to be for us to find the answers and for people to own the answers. And then they came up with 6, which are far more brilliant than mine. But
Interesting. So you've, at least at this stage, said we're keeping these 9, not change them. And I will share with our audience, I'm starting to shift my own point of view about the sanctity of preserving them as they originally were. So I have historically told people and written in my books that the language I use for these is that we should work on them with what I call an intention of permanence. It's our intention to try to make these enduring principles that aren't going to change, but it's an intention. It's not like we're not allowed to change something, but we're not going into it with a perspective that we should every 2 years see what we want to change. Having said that, it's interesting. I'm starting to see opportunities where sometimes taking a fresh look at them can be useful. I was in Houston a couple of weeks ago working with one of our clients there, and we took a look at their fundamentals that had been created 7 years ago. They've practiced them very successfully, and they just wanted to maybe re-energize things. And so we went into a process of meeting with the leadership team and asking the question in an open-minded way, is there anything we want to change? The goal wasn't, let's make some changes. It was, let's evaluate, is there anything we want to change? Are there any, again, we call them fundamentals, are there any fundamentals that we don't think maybe are quite as relevant as we once thought, or maybe in today's world? Are there any that maybe are missing that now that we've come to realize, shoot, there's some things that could have been covered in here? And are there any that maybe the way we worded them we've seen could be tweaked a little bit to make them a little crisper, cleaner, more accurately describe what we want? And I would say we made probably 5% changes. So the bulk of it was the same. And it was a very healthy process, which is counter to what I've always told people.
Well, you know what it sounds like to me, David. Sorry to interrupt, but it sounds a whole lot like, and again, not to make this a church podcast, but
sure.
If you look at the history of how the church has treated the Bible, it's permanent, but the world changes and you've got to figure out what's the permanence and how do you adapt that to the new world that you're living in. Like, the church used to use the Bible to support slavery. Well, that's no, or to depress women, no. So you can keep the permanence, but adapt to whatever's new. And that takes the wisdom of Solomon to figure out what is that thing. Probably takes hiring you, but
well, it was interesting to do. And what I saw in that is, as we there's a process that we call the rollout, where how this gets introduced to the workforce in highly interactive, engaged sessions. And so we rolled out this updated set, and to see the enthusiasm and the energy and the passion of people. And they weren't saying, well, why did we change this? It was a renewed level of enthusiasm. And so I'm, in my own mind, sort of rethinking the statements I've made in the past about whether it's a healthy thing to review them. And there's no right answer, of course. There's just whatever works. But I've always thought we shouldn't, and I'm now beginning to change my tune about that with some experience, saying, well, sometimes it's pretty healthy to ask ourselves, is there anything we want to change?
I'm an external processor as we're talking. I could think of a couple we probably ought to go back and reword.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, when we were a younger company and a lot smaller, one of our
Mm-hmm.
9 values is contagious fun.
Mm-hmm.
You should go to work and just all work and no play. Like, there needs to be some fun in the workplace. Right. But what I've discovered when we were young, and frankly, probably 2/3 of our workforce was single, mm-hmm. and didn't have as many responsibilities. So it was like a family kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Fun was a signature. And now that I look back at things where I hope we're a little more mature company, I'm realizing fun is not a synonym of culture at all. It might be an outgrowth of good culture, but it's not a synonym. It's just like we took the mm-hmm. One of the best workplaces, like the Quantum or one of those, years ago, for a survey, and one of the questions was pick 3 words to describe your workplace. That's all, not mm-hmm. words from a list. So I don't know what the right number is. I think it's somewhere around 155,000 words in the English language, somewhere in that bandwidth. 2/3 of our staff picked the word fun out of 155, 2/3. Mm-hmm. And, that sounds great. But what about meaningful? What about purposeful? See, leaving it at fun left it too surface level. If so, and by the way, studying cultures that have workplaces that have fun cultures usually end up about 5 years later having a culture full of lawsuits. Right. so I might, if I were tweaking right now on the fly, I might change that a little bit to say, when we were it was like an early episode of Friends. It was a bunch of mm-hmm. single people that all did everything together. That was a lot of fun, but I don't know that might be an outgrowth of culture. It might not be the culture, if that makes sense.
It does. I would offer, just the way that I would think about that is, I would consider that our culture isn't defined by fun or as fun, but an element of our culture is that we enjoy what we do. And if it's a place where we're not reminding ourselves that we should be enjoying what we're doing and the people we're hanging around with and the things that we do most of the time, it's probably not a very healthy place if we're not generally having fun. Now, again, the definition of our culture isn't we're here to have fun. That's not the purpose of our company or our culture. But I think reminding ourselves that at the end of the day, we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we should be enjoying this.
Yeah.
I think that's a healthy reminder. And in fact, I sometimes say, because I would tell you that the vast majority of our clients, not all, but the vast majority, have some fundamental around, we often call it keeping things fun.
Right.
And it's just sort of like a reminder that in the stress of daily things, sometimes we can take ourselves too seriously. And most of us, there are companies that do life and death work, but they're rare. Most of us, what we're doing is not life and death. If you didn't fulfill that search as quickly as you hoped you would, no one's going to die about this. And sometimes when you care as deeply as I suspect you do about the quality of what you're doing, sometimes you can take yourself too seriously. And a little reminder that this isn't life and death, and we got to keep some perspective here, can be a healthy element of the culture, not the defining of the culture, but an element in that culture.
That's super helpful. You've been doing this a long time.
A little bit. And, and it's interesting, much like you, William, so you're more of a researcher than I am, way more of a researcher than I am. I'm much more of an instinctive person. And I would say that as a philosophy major, and having gotten into business the day I graduated school and never having worked in any other company other than my own, what I've learned, so this is my second company. My first company was an employee benefits consulting company, and we built a great culture just by doing the stuff that made sense to me. And incidentally, a big part of what I learned from Ritz-Carlton many years ago. So we give them credit for everything I ever teach came from what I learned from Ritz.
What other major company do you know that has become an adjective?
Yeah.
Ritzy was not a word before the Ritz.
Yeah. I mean, they know how to do it. And what attracted me to them was the consistency with which they do it.
Yes.
And I knew there had to be systems and processes that led to that. And so I learned a lot. This goes back 20 plus years ago from them, and instituted a lot of things that we did in my first company. But what I was going to say about that is that after I sold that first company and built the second company, most of what I have learned has just been intuitive observation, reflection, noticing what things seem to work and what things don't seem to work. But over time, we've built, a lot of material about how to do this, but it really wasn't research based. It was just what we've noticed works.
Well, David, we've worked with a lot of companies, organizations, churches, schools, et cetera, where the current CEO is the founder.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've found that most of the time people who have a fairly successful organization and the founder's there, the founder has a pretty good gut.
Yes.
And I get nervous that my gut's going to be wrong. So I just try and do research and make sure I'm not crazy. And, but I think every good leader out there, if you're doing well and you started your organization, you probably have a pretty good gut, and you probably know your organization better than anybody else. So,
yes, that's true. I think that's true in my experience. What I would add to that is, and I think the difference between being good and great is the great ones had good gut and were reflective enough to say, what does my gut tell me? And how do I translate that into things that we can articulate and teach and institutionalize? So the good companies had founders with good guts, and just because they were nice people and they had good instincts, they did a lot of good things. The best companies said, wow, that really worked. I wonder what's happening here. And can I articulate, how did we get so successful? Mm-hmm. And can I document that and articulate that and teach it to people so that success can continue beyond my instincts?
And now you're back to Ritz-Carlton with a good German structured engineering-minded founder.
Yes, exactly. Well, and you think about engineering, I've said to many that engineers think you can engineer everything. And to a certain extent, you can. That there is a way to engineer culture. And what you and I have been talking about is how do you purposely create that instead of allowing it to happen by accident?
Well, and what I've
done that purposely.
David, is to hire. I'm not an integrator. I'm a visionary, right? I've had to learn to find integrators who can ask those questions and make me sit down and begin to articulate what that vision is. And that's okay. That's not me being negligent leader. That's the engineering piece. Like, for instance, Bernard Arnault, the richest man in the world, runs LVMH and owns most of it, right? Everybody's like, what fashion did he start in? What fashion industry? No, he went to engineering school.
Yeah.
He's an engineer at heart, and he's been able to systematize these things that work for so long, and the flywheel is spinning so fast now that it just
keeps going. Well, and that's the way that we sometimes talk about it with a founder like you, is to say what we need to be able to do is to extract Williamness from you. There's a quality of what it means to be William, and whether you've articulated it or not historically, it's there. And if we can, it's sort of what you were doing in the exercise you did with the entire staff and when you first developed them. But we're trying to extract, there are things you believe in passionately, that you believe if we're going to have a great company, these are the things that are going to make us great. Yep. And we have to extract that out of you and be able to then document that and teach that stuff consistently. So that even when you're not there, whether that's because you were out doing something else, giving a talk somewhere or playing golf, or whether you pass the company on to others, how do we sustain that so that Williamness doesn't get lost? And if you don't have a system for that, you lose Williamness when William isn't there.
Well, and David, that's exactly why we get asked to come do searches. It's like, you can figure out our Davidness or our cultural thing, our DNA, and we want you to find a match. It's almost like we think a search is like an organ transplant, right? And so I went and I thought about that. I was like, and we live right near the medical center here in Houston. And so I actually talked to some transplant docs, like, what separates the best transplant doc from the rest? And the uniform answer I got was, well, look, finding donors is hard, right? But that's not where the art is. So like finding candidates in a search, that's hard. But the real art is the tissue match. Because you can put a healthy body with a healthy heart, and if they don't match, it's just a bad ending for everybody.
That's a great
analogy. And so what we called in to do with the search is to say, how do we extract the Davidness? How do we know what the value is? How do we know the why? And all of a sudden, it's so fascinating to me. I mean, we just finished doing a pretty big search for a privately held company that builds very, very, very high-end aircrafts for our military and government. And they asked us to go find these people for their company. I'm like, I've flown in a plane, but I'm not past that. They're like, no. The technical competencies we know you can figure out. We love that you know our heart, you know our DNA, and we're hiring you to find the people that are our tissue match, that match our why. And so, and I think the world is starting to realize that's really where the ball game is. And that's why our business in these companies that are like, our culture is everything. We need somebody who can find people, like long lost family members. Go find those. That's kind of the archaeological dig we have to do every time we do a search.
Yeah. The way that there's a description I think of as we talk about finding those matches, and the description I think of is that person who's the good match. Again, I referred to this before when we're talking about finding matches, but in their previous company, they kind of stood out because they didn't really fit in. And if it's a good match, when they come to our company or your company, they say, oh, I feel like I'm at home. The other people here are like me. I'm one of the people here. I'm not some standout that doesn't fit with the rest.
Exactly.
Then you've got a good match.
It's the old Cheers theme song. If anyone listening is that old, you want to go where everybody knows your name.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this has been a fascinating conversation. You and I could probably talk about this for about 4 more hours, William. But I want to respect your time. So a couple questions for you to sort of wrap up. One is, if people want to learn more about the work that you do in your search firm and the things that you promote, where would they find you?
Yeah, that's an unfortunately easy answer. You just try and type Vanderbloemen into any search engine.
Good luck.
No, really.
Yeah.
I bought 300 domain names when I started the company. Like I think I have lifetime platinum status with GoDaddy. and I mean, I need to get in a recovery group, frankly. I need to stop doing it. But I told the SEO consultants we hired, I'm like, find the best domain name. But not my name, because I'm going to die one day and this has to live past me. And they came back and said, actually, your name's the best one because it's so messed up. You can misspell it into Google, literally.
Still find you?
So just go, you try and type it, you'll find it. And the cool thing is, David, there are probably, I think, 4,500 free resources on that website, all targeting how do you build, run, and keep a great team. Yeah. And I didn't learn any of that in a philosophy degree. So my mother said to me, you know what people with philosophy degrees spend their career saying? And I said, no, what, Mom? She said, do you want fries with that? And that's unfortunately not. So, go look at that website. Maybe you can find a resource that would help you. You'll also find things like the book Culture Wins that we talked about. Our latest book that's just come out called Be the Unicorn does sort of find a roadmap to becoming one of those people that excels and stands out of the crowd. And hopefully it'll be a help to you. So I'm going to spell your last name for our audience. So Vanderer, and we'll put this in the show notes as well, but Vanderbloemen. Am I correct on that?
William?
That's right. That's
So
right.
for those that are listening, that's the correct spelling, even though you might be able to find William in some other ones, but you can see his books. You can learn more about his company. You'll see his 9 values are on his website, and they're really impressive there. So thank you so much, William. I really appreciate the chance for you to share with us the wisdom that you've gained. I know it has big impact.
Well, David, thank you for having me. I've learned a lot, and man, you're good at what you do. I appreciate you
Well,
letting me
thank
be
you.
part of it.
Thank you.